Have you ever stopped to consider that the choice you just made wasn't actually yours? That feeling of agency, that sense that you are the author of your own story. What if it's merely an elaborate fiction your brain tells itself? A comforting lie we all believe because the alternative is too disturbing to face. Think about it. When you decided to watch this video, did you actually decide, or were you compelled by forces beyond your conscious awareness, algorithms that know your preferences better than you do, neural pathways shaped by experiences you don't remember, genes you never asked for, influencing desires you didn't choose to have? Free will, the cornerstone of human identity, the foundation of our legal systems, our moral frameworks, our very sense of self. We punish criminals because they chose to commit crimes. We praise innovation because creators chose to bring something new into existence. We fall in love because we believe we've chosen our partners. But what if this cornerstone is built on shifting sand? What if free will, this thing we're so certain exists, is actually the most pervasive illusion humans have ever experienced? This isn't just abstract philosophy. This goes to the core of what it means to be human. If free will is an illusion, then who or what is really pulling your strings? The questioning of free will isn't new, it's ancient. Across time and cultures, those who peered deeply into the nature of reality often returned with disturbing insights. In ancient Greece, the tragedian Sophocles wrote of Oedipus, a man who desperately tried to escape his prophesied fate, only to fulfill it through his very attempts to avoid it. The Greeks understood something. We, modern humans drunk on individual autonomy, have forgotten that forces larger than ourselves shape our destinies. Buddhism, for over 2,500 years, has taught that the self, this I that we believe makes decisions, is itself an illusion, a temporary collection of perceptions with no permanent controller at the helm. If there is no permanent self, then who exactly is doing the choosing? In Western philosophy, Baruch Spinoza, writing in the 17th century, argued that free will was impossible in a universe governed by causality. He was excommunicated from his religious community for such heretical views. The pattern repeats throughout history. Those who question free will are often silenced, not because they're wrong, but because the truth is too threatening to the social order. Friedrich Nietzsche went further, declaring the desire for freedom of will in the superlative metaphysical sense. The desire to bear the entire and ultimate responsibility for one's actions, oneself, and to absolve God, the world, ancestors, chance, and society involves nothing less than to be precisely this causa sui cause of oneself. In simpler terms, believing in complete free will requires the impossible believing you created yourself. These philosophers were dismissed in their time, called pessimists, fatalists, determinists, but were they wrong? Or were they simply brave enough to see what most cannot bear to? If philosophy plants seeds of doubt about free will, modern neuroscience has grown these seeds into towering trees that cast long shadows over our cherished notion of choice. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that still haunts philosophical discussions today. He asked participants to flex their wrist whenever they felt the urge to do so, and to note the time they became aware of their decision. What he discovered was shocking. Brain activity indicating preparation for movement began approximately 550 milliseconds before the subject was consciously aware of their decision to move. Let that sink in. Your brain begins the process of deciding before you're even aware a decision is being made. Later studies using fMRI technology have shown that researchers can predict which button a person will push up to 10 seconds before the person themselves knows which button they'll choose. 10 seconds of your brain working on autopilot while the conscious you remains oblivious. But this predetermination goes deeper than momentary decisions. Modern genetics and neuroscience have revealed how much of our personality, our preferences, our habits, our very character is shaped by factors entirely outside our control. Your genes, which you didn't select, influence everything from your risk tolerance to your political leanings. Twin studies show that identical twins separated at birth often make strikingly similar life choices. Your early childhood experiences, which you couldn't control, physically shaped the development of your brain, particularly your prefrontal cortex, the very region involved in decision-making. Even the microbiome in your gut, those trillions of microscopic organisms, influence your moods and behaviors through the gut-brain axis. Did you choose your gut bacteria? Of course not. The neuroscientist Sam Harris puts it bluntly, you are not the author of your thoughts and actions in the way that people generally suppose. Consider this. Before a thought appears in your consciousness, where is it? It's not as if you consciously create your thoughts. They simply appear, arising from the mysterious depths of your brain through processes you cannot access. You don't choose what to think, you simply become aware of thoughts that have already formed. As the ancient Buddhists understood, you are not the thinker of your thoughts, you are their witness. But if free will is an illusion, why is this illusion so powerful? Why does it feel so undeniably real that most people would consider these discussions absurd? The answer lies in evolutionary psychology. A sense of agency, even if illusory, is hugely adaptive for a social species. Humans who believed they could control their destiny were more likely to try to strive to overcome. Humans who believed that they were responsible for their actions were more likely to cooperate in groups, to follow social norms, to build the complex societies that allowed our species to thrive. The illusion of free will is so convincing because those who fully internalized it had a survival advantage. We are the descendants of the most effective believers in a useful fiction. This doesn't make the illusion less remarkable. Your brain performs an astounding feat. It takes decisions that were determined by unconscious processes, and it retroactively creates a narrative that you consciously chose them. This happens so quickly, so seamlessly, that the illusion is nearly perfect. Think of it as a magic trick your brain performs for itself. The decision is made, backstage in the dark, by unconscious neural activity. But what you experience is only the moment when the result of that decision is pushed into the spotlight of consciousness, and your brain convincingly tells you that the spotlight itself caused what it merely illuminated. This is why the illusion persists even in those who intellectually reject free will. The neuroscientist who knows her decisions are predetermined still experiences the sensation of choosing lunch. The philosopher who writes treatises against free will still feels the sting of regret for past actions. The illusion is built into the very architecture of human experience. We cannot escape it any more than we can step outside our own minds. Let's explore the logical case against free will, what philosophers call the problem of determinism. Every event in the universe is caused by prior events, which were themselves caused by still earlier events, in an unbroken chain stretching back to the beginning of time. Your brain states and the decisions they produce are physical events subject to the same causal laws as everything else in the universe. For a decision to be truly free, it would need to somehow stand outside this causal chain, to be uncaused or self-caused. But this would require something almost mystical, a decision that emerges from nothing, or a self that exists somehow separate from the physical brain. Some have sought refuge in quantum indeterminacy, the apparent randomness at the subatomic level, but randomness is not freedom. If your decisions were influenced by truly random quantum fluctuations, this would make them less determined, but not more yours. Random events are not chosen events. Others appeal to complexity. The human brain, with its 86 billion neurons and quadrillion connections, is so complex that its behavior cannot be reduced to simple, deterministic processes. But complexity only obscures causality. It doesn't eliminate it. Weather systems are complex too, but a hurricane doesn't have free will. The prison of causality has no visible bars, no walls we can touch, yet it constrains us nonetheless, governing every firing synapse, every formed thought, every apparent choice. Consider a simple question: could you have done otherwise? In any given situation, with your brain in exactly the state it was in, with all the same inputs and influences, could you actually have made a different choice? Intuition might scream yes, but logic whispers a disturbing no. If free will is indeed an illusion, what does this mean for our lives, our society, our sense of meaning? Our legal systems are built on the concept of moral responsibility, which seems to require free will. If a criminal's actions were determined by causes beyond their control, their genes, their childhood trauma, their brain chemistry, how can we justify punishment rather than treatment? Some fear that abandoning belief in free will would lead to moral nihilism. Studies have shown that when people are convinced they lack free will, they become more likely to cheat, less likely to help others, less likely to feel accountable for their actions. But is this fear justified? Perhaps our notion of moral responsibility doesn't require the kind of metaphysical free will philosophers debate. Perhaps we can reconstruct our ethical frameworks on more realistic foundations. After all, even in a determined universe, consequences matter. A society that holds people responsible for their actions not because they could have done otherwise, but because accountability systems shape future behavior, can still function. Punishment can deter, rehabilitation can rewire neural patterns, praise can reinforce prosocial behavior. The illusion of free will might be a necessary fiction, a noble lie that enables human society to function, or perhaps transcending this illusion could lead to greater compassion as we recognize that the criminal, the saint, and everyone in between are products of forces they didn't choose or create. Consider how you view others when you truly internalize that they could not have done otherwise. The driver who cuts you off in traffic, the colleague who betrays your trust, the parent who failed you, all were acting out scripts written by their genes, their environments, their neural architecture. Is your anger still justified? Or does it transform into something more like sadness at the inevitability of human frailty? And what about your view of yourself, your failures, your weaknesses, your darkest moments? Were they ever truly avoidable, or were they as inevitable as the tide, given who you were and what came before? Yet perhaps there's a deeper kind of freedom available to us, not the freedom to have chosen differently in the past, but the freedom to become more conscious of the forces that shape us. Even if your thoughts arise from unconscious processes you didn't choose, your awareness of those thoughts creates a crucial space, a gap between stimulus and response, between impulse and action. The philosopher Spinoza, who denied free will as it's commonly understood, still wrote of a kind of freedom. He didn't believe we could break the chains of causality, but he thought we could become aware of our chains, and in that awareness find a different kind of liberty. The Buddhist tradition, too, while denying the permanent self that could possess free will, offers practices to increase awareness of the conditioned nature of our thoughts and actions. This awareness doesn't break causality, but it introduces new causes into the system, the cause of attention itself. Think about it this way: a person unaware of their unconscious biases is fully controlled by them. A person aware of those biases is still influenced, but that awareness itself becomes a new factor in the causal chain. Consciousness becomes not the author of our actions, but a potential modifier of them. This doesn't rescue free will in the metaphysical sense. You didn't choose to become more aware after all. That too was caused by prior events, perhaps even by watching this video which you were determined to click on, by forces beyond your control. But it does offer a more nuanced picture than simple fatalism. In this view, the question changes from do we have free will to how can awareness of our lack of free will paradoxically make us less constrained by our programming. From the cosmic perspective, free will may be just one more human conceit, like believing the Earth was the center of the universe, or that humans were specially created rather than evolved. We are patterns of matter and energy, obeying the same physical laws as stars and stones. The universe unfolds according to its nature, and we are not separate from that unfolding, but part of it. In the words of Albert Einstein, who rejected the conventional notion of free will, human beings in their thinking, feeling and acting are not free agents, but are as causally bound as the stars in their motion. Yet Einstein didn't find this realization depressing. Instead, he found it connected him more deeply to the cosmos, dissolving the illusion of separation between self and universe. Perhaps this is the final irony, that accepting the illusion of free will doesn't diminish human experience but enriches it. We are not separate agents fighting against a deterministic universe, but expressions of that universe itself, like characters in a novel who gain depth and meaning through their predetermined actions. Perhaps our lives are no less meaningful for being, in some sense, already written. After all, even in a fully determined universe, the future remains unknown to us. The fact that our choices are determined doesn't make them predictable to our conscious minds. We still must live forward, moment by moment, choice by apparent choice. So where does this leave us? If free will is indeed an illusion, we face a peculiar paradox. We must live as if our choices matter, even if, in some ultimate sense, there were never choices at all. But perhaps there's wisdom in this. Paradox, a harmony between determinism and lived experience that our binary thinking struggles to capture. When you leave this video and go about your day, you will continue to feel as if you're making choices. That illusion is too deeply embedded in human experience to dispel with mere intellectual understanding. Yet perhaps something will have shifted. Perhaps you'll catch yourself in moments of judgment of others or yourself. And remember that the causal chains leading to any actions stretch back to the beginning of time. Perhaps you'll look at the people around you, the ones you love, the ones you hate, the ones you merely tolerate, and see them not as self-created autonomous agents, but as expressions of forces beyond their control, just as you are. And in that seeing, perhaps you'll find something that feels paradoxically like freedom. Not the freedom to have chosen differently, but the freedom that comes from understanding the nature of your chains. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "The willing destiny leads, the unwilling destiny drags." The choice, if we can call it that, is not whether to follow the predetermined path, but whether to do so with awareness or in ignorance. So I leave you with a question, though perhaps it's one you were always going to ponder. Now that you've glimpsed the possibility that free will is an illusion, how will this predetermined path of yours unfold? The answer, of course, was decided long ago. But the mystery for your conscious mind at least remains. What thoughts are arising in you now? What will you do next? And who or what is really doing it?